The civil calendar that most of the world follows, what we call the Gregorian Calendar, finds its roots in ancient Rome, introduced by Julius Caesar. It is solely based on a solar cycle. Muslims around the world follow the Islamic calendar, which is solely based on the lunar cycle. In theory, months on the Gregorian solar calendar have no intrinsic meaning, as the solar cycle doesn't distinguish between any time periods during the year. There is only one set time block of 365 days. Arbitrarily and for practical purposes, a year was subdivided into smaller periods of time. Technically, they could have subdivided a year into any amount of months that they chose. By contrast, the Islamic calendar follows the moon. A lunar cycle is approximately 29 and a half days. During this cycle, the moon waxes and wanes only to disappear completely and become a new moon again. The Islamic world decided to establish their calendar based on this. A new month starts with a new moon, and a month ends when it disappears. This type of calendar has no real place for years. The lunar cycle does not distinguish between years. It only measures months. It was only for practical purposes that they decided that 12 lunar cycles make a year. Technically, one could have chose any amount of months you want and established that as a year. Unlike these two calendars, the Jewish calendar is a synthesis of both. Some call it a lunisolar calendar. In Parshas Bo, the first mitzvah that God gives the Jewish people is the mitzvah to establish a Jewish calendar with its months based on a lunar cycle. A few chapters later, in this week's Torah portion, Mishpatim, we are given the laws of establishing our holidays in specific seasons. We are to celebrate Passover in the month of spring, says the Torah. And likewise, the holidays of Shavuot and Sukkot must be observed in specific seasons. While you may not realize it right away, these two commandments can easily be a contradiction one to the other. For if we follow a strictly lunar calendar, in which every year is just 354 days, that's 11 days less than the solar cycle, which is 365 days. So what will emerge from this is that in just a few short years, every holiday will be off-seasoned. In order to ensure that indeed the holidays remain aligned with the solar seasons, we have what is called a Jewish leap year. Every few years, our rabbis would add another additional month to the Jewish calendar. This year, the Jewish year of 5784, is a Jewish leap year, with an additional month of Adar added to our calendar. Now the mystics point out that the Hebrew word for year is shana, which means to repeat. The word for a month in Hebrew is chodesh, which shares the same root as the word chadash, which means new. The yearly cycle, they say, represents the steady daily service of God, that which is repeated every single day, like the sun that never changes. It's as reliable as it gets. The months represent innovation, something new and fresh. The moon is never the same. Every day it's slightly different. In our relationship with God, and likewise our interpersonal relationships, we must have both steadiness and reliability, as well as creativity and fun. It must start with the foundation of Shona, where we train ourselves with a proper daily schedule that we keep to. But like the blend of our calendar, from time to time we must also incorporate something fresh. We are to do something additional and try something new. This is the recipe for a long-lasting, healthy, and meaningful relationship, both with Hashem and with our fellow man. May we merit to be blessed with a good Chodesh of Adar, which is filled with joy and happiness that breaks us free of all our limitation and barriers. I wish you a good Shabbos and a good Chodesh.